Hey, Matt Bacon from Savaria Studios here today, and we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of record labels. Obviously, this is a big subject to be tackling in a 5 or 6 minute video, and there are people who swear by record labels, and other people who spent their entire life searching for record labels, and still other people who are like, record labels are the fucking worst. I think for the demographic of people watching this kind of video, the big advantage of record labels is brand affiliation. Being part of a label that has a reputation for having good bands in your genre is just endlessly helpful. Because that gives people a reason to want to check it out, because it's like, this label says we're cool, so we must be cool. Labels, those people just network all the time because they're constantly trying to get bigger bands, trying to get cool opportunities for their bands. And so you really want a label that kind of helps you access opportunities, including probably most importantly getting some sort of distribution going, so that your records aren't just sold in maybe your local record shop and on the web store. Obviously there is some money involved. I think it's a lot less than most people expect. You're not going to get an advance, and if you think you're going to get an advance, fuck you. No one's entitled to an advance. That being said, getting the cost of CDs paid for example, that's great. That's a few $1,000s you don't have to spend. And that's the kind of thing that I think you should be looking at. Well, yeah, I have to pay to produce the record on my own, and yeah, I'm not getting an advance or whatever, but look at me. At least I get CDs for free, and I get CDs whenever I want them, and ideally also some sort of merchandise deal. At the same time, there's a lot of cons to record labels. I think it's important to realize that because of the way deals are set up, it's really hard to get out of debt, and if you print more CDs, you're just going to wind up in more debt. That's, just the way things are, and as much as I don't want it to be that way, record labels are all running on super tight margins. So they're all running with very little outside support. It's not an easy game to play. Having the belief that labels are like all these bigwigs who think they're gods is totally remiss. There are people like that. This is why you don't move to Los Angeles. When it comes down to it, most record labels are just kind of run by nice guys who want to help you out. And they're just limited in resources, and you need to accept that. You need to accept that because of these limited resources across all labels, even big ones, and because they're trying to do things in a more official capacity, there's going to be two things that a lot of artists aren't comfortable with, which is a certain loss of artistic control. These days, usually it's just labels have the right to just say no if they think a record isn't good enough. They don't send their own producer in a lot of the time, although some of the bigger ones do. The other thing to be aware of is that things get slowed down. If you're trying to put together a proper release with proper distribution and everything, you're looking at a solid 9 months between getting your masters and getting your release out, and that's even for a pretty small label who doesn't have that many releases coming out. So be aware of that you're gonna have a slowed down time frame. It's probably worth it, but it's something to be aware of. The final thing that I want to talk on as a con is that if your label fucks up, you're dragged into that. A record label is a brand and you want to be a part of that brand, but if your label signs a band that, I don't know, are Nazis, that's going to reflect poorly on every band on that label, especially if it's a boutique label, which is the kind of label you probably want to be targeting. And so you need to realize that if you're becoming part of a label community, you're somewhat at risk. And most people can separate these things, but if your record label becomes affiliated with an ideology or a quote that you're not necessarily comfortable with, there's not much you can do about that, especially if you're locked in for another couple records. I'm not saying that should be a reason not to do it. It's just, again, something to be aware of. When it comes down to it, a lot of record labels are scams, and I'm not going to defend them. I think any label you want to sign up to, you should ask your friends, you should do a lot of Googling, you should, check in depth, make sure everything they do is above board, and hopefully you won't get too fucked. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. We're going to be putting out one of these every week for the rest of the summer, and hopefully going on we'll have webinars and courses and all that. So if you can give it a thumbs up and a share and all of those other things that people do on the internet that I don't understand because I live in Iraq and I'm very old, do that. Thank you. Party.